But let's understand this volcanic ash cloud a little bit more in detail. Joining us is Vimlendu Jha. He's an environmentalist. Vimlendu, thank you so much for taking out the time. I first just want to understand from you, if you had to explain what an volcanic ash really is to a 5-year-old in very simple terms, what would you say it is?
So largely when we talk about volcanic ash, it's actually coming, we are talking about a mix or almost like a concoction of glass particles, rock particles, and sulfur dioxide. And that entire eruption or that plume that you call it, and then in the form of ash actually goes and enters the atmosphere. In this particular case of a volcanic eruption that has happened in Ethiopia, we are talking about almost 20,000 to 30,000 feet up in the sky is where this entire plume has actually reached. And also in terms of the velocity. So right now, imagine one of the things that's very, very important for us to understand that every time, indeed, you and I will be talking about pollution or have been talking about pollution, the capacity of something that has happened in Ethiopia for it to actually travel as far as 4,000 kilometers. So indeed, that's what is the ash. We are talking about particles of glass, of rock, of sulfur dioxide actually entering the entire atmosphere.
I see, and that's the reason why the Civil Aviation Ministry has also been so careful about the impact it could actually have on the aircraft. But it's traveling. This entire ash cloud has been traveling for more than 4,000 kilometers. Could you explain to us in a little bit more detail why it is not having a direct impact on our breathing space just yet, at least in Delhi?
So of course, right now when we're linking this entire conversation, also it's right fear that people have that whether this is going to impact an already gas chamber like Delhi. The fact that our pollution, largely when we talk about air quality or the entire the pollutants are largely in 2 to 3 kilometer from the surface, and this one is very, very high. So directly and immediately there will not be any implication of this sulfur dioxide, although sulfur dioxide is a very, very key component of ambient air quality, and a large concentration of sulfur dioxide is not good for public health or public air in that sense. But in this particular case, because it is very, very high, it will not have an immediate impact. Also in terms of deposition, because it's actually been traveling for almost 4,000 kilometers, it will perhaps settle in the Himalayan area, in Tarai Himalayas, or in China in that sense. So from a deposition point of view, also Delhi-NCR doesn't have a risk. Delhi-NCR, indeed, from an AQI point of view, will not have an immediate impact. Otherwise, of course, imagine when you already have so much of sulfur dioxide and you have sulfur dioxide coming from this volcanic eruption, it could have been a mayhem. But of course, it's not directly, not too much of an impact that this will have on ambient air quality of Delhi.
So, Vimlendu, if I'm to understand this correct, you are actually saying that this thick layer of toxic air that is surrounding the National Capital Region and perhaps most of North India is the reason why this really poisonous, disastrous volcanic ash cannot enter our breathing space. So smog is actually protecting us. Am I to understand that correctly?
Scientifically not. Scientifically, smog is no shield at all. Smog is actually killing us rather than being a shield to us to anything and anything coming from this environment. But of course, the fact that it is at such a high altitude and at such a high velocity of 100 to 120 kilometers per hour is what this has been traveling, this entire concoction or ash or plume that we're talking about. In a way, it is not going to come anyway close. So in a way, rather than calling it a shield, I would say that Delhi's smog is so dangerous and so scary that it's actually scaring the plumes away and not letting the plumes come closer to this toxic Delhi smog in that sense.
Keeping it away. All right. You touched upon a little bit earlier, Vimlendu, on the settling point. Where this cloud actually goes and settles could actually be the area where we see maximum impact. You're saying it could be China, it could be some areas in the Indian Himalayan zone as well. I'm curious to understand where will you see the impact, and what about water bodies that actually penetrate from there and go to come to all of us here in the northern belt?
So largely, a lot of times we talk about the fact that volcanic eruptions are not due to climate change, but it can cause certain amount of climate change or some change in our pattern, in our weather pattern, although very, very long term. So it's not an immediate one. A lot of times people also say that the volcanic eruptions or plumes or ash, in a way, helps in agriculture also, but of course changes the overall temperature and other human settlement and things. So, of course, when it settles there, the deposition, when it happens in the Tarai region, also we know that that's where all our water bodies come from in the Himalayas. We do not know the impact of it. Right now, we don't even know where this will settle. It is a projected area that we think it will actually stick around the Himalayas and more so towards the China side in that sense. But in the long term, indeed, it will have some sort of an impact on overall climate conditions and the weather conditions of our planet. Of course, we don't know whether that impact or that change, so-called, which is not human-induced in that sense, can happen over 200 years or 300 years. So there's no immediate implication, ramification, impact, or consequence of this volcano eruption, so to say, to our climate.
All right, so no immediate impact that we know of, but could have long-term impact on our water body especially, so we've got to keep our eye out, which makes me wonder, is there no way of actually projecting the next big eruption so that the world can be better prepared from an absolute disaster like this one?
So, of course, there are right now many places where volcano eruptions are taking place. Unless it is an active volcano, it is very, very difficult actually to project, to tell that when will a new volcano erupt in that sense. So very, very difficult to predict this. And that's the reason why scientists and geoscientists and geologists were not even aware or not even prepared for such a big eruption in Ethiopia.
All right, Mr. Jha, we'll leave it there for the moment. Thanks so much for joining us and educating us on the matter.